think we're on. At least I'm on.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody for joining today. We are going to be talking about learning from successful robotic deployment strategies. Just a few things about the robotics group. The robotics group conducts education and outreach. Basically, we're trying to focus in on the warehousing markets and informing the public about the uses for robotics. Our current membership, if you can see here, I'm not going to read them all off, but there are over 40 members in this group. Also, if you want to see any of our new content that we're putting out, please follow us on LinkedIn. We will actually be putting things out there. I'll give it a second. All right. I know there's going to be a lot of QR codes, but here's our latest white paper on robotic trends. And this was written by Penn State for us based off of information that we had got, that the robotics group had worked on with Gartner and Peerless Media. A couple of other things here now. So we have some events. So tomorrow we will be having a CSS and robotics group networking event in room N228. We will also have, at this networking event, we will have Amazon and Tompkins Ventures speaking to everybody in attendance, and that's in the morning. And then in the evening, we have a happy hour, the manufacturing happy hour by Chris Lukey that TRG will be sponsoring from 8 to 11. If you need more information about either one of these, you can come see me in the back. And with that, I'd like to introduce Greg Miney from Envista.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Greg Miney with InvistaCore. I'm a vice president here within our consulting, automation, and robotics practice. And basically, we help design and implement material handling systems, including robotics. With me on the panel is Jasmine Lombardi from Locus, Matt Culp, and Jeremy Moore. Jasmine, tell us a little about yourself.
Just a sound check here. Can you guys hear me? All good? Hi, Jasmine Lombardi. I know I don't look Italian. I'm actually Chinese here, but I do use my hands a lot. Any case, I'm the Chief Customer Officer with Locus Robotics. I've been with Locus for the 8.5 years. So I'd love to be in this session to share with you the journey that we did, and especially covering the deployment aspects of the automation. So my team is in charge of pretty much what I call the entire customer journey, starting from deployment into support, account management, optimization, field services. Everything you can think of to make our customers successful is in my organization. So glad to be here.
Hi, yeah, my name is, can you hear me okay? Check. Hello. Testing. There we go. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to ProMat. And my name is Matt Culp, with St. Ange Company for 26 years. And our firm is a professional services firm only, and we do material handling designs for distribution centers, manufacturing plants, among many others. And did he turn me off? So there we go. So that'll be the perspective that I'll be providing. And it sounds like I'm going to have to find a new chair.
Whoa, there we go. Good morning, everyone. Jeremy Moore. I am the Senior Director of Operations for Saddle Creek Logistics. Been with Saddle Creek for 2 years and about a month. And I'm excited to be here today to talk more about the tactical implementation, really the end-to-end life cycle of implementing robotics and what that looks like for an operator and local operations.
Yeah, so the One of the topics that we first wanted to discuss is who should have a seat at the table, who needs to be involved in the decision-making process from a client perspective. And Jasmine, I was wanting to get your opinion on that one.
Sure. So as I said, I've been with Locus for 8.5 years. As you can imagine, in the early days, automation is not necessarily the thing for a lot of customers here. I was employee number 1 of my own customer success organization, so I learned a lot over the last 8.5 years. So one thing in terms of where who should have a seat at the table, it's really the important stakeholders. At Locus Robotics, it's a very cross-functional, it's a partnership with our customers. So we started off with a kickoff process, and within the kickoff process, we identify who are the key stakeholders, and they would include the executive champion, right? Because you need the executive buy-in. You need the operational folks, like the director of operations, like Jeremy here. Even maybe the ops manager, who will own the systems at the end of the day. So you want to get them at the beginning and give them a seat at the table. Now, IT is another one. WMS integration, because our solution integrates with the WMS systems. So as a result, it's so important to have IT or maybe even the WMS integrator, maybe it could be a technology partner, or any other partners that you integrate with should have a seat at the table. Because during the kickoff process, you are going to go through what the journey is like during deployment. So the sooner you can get them involved at the get-go, the more buy-in you get from them, so that they can understand the process, they can be part of it, they have a voice to make sure that this automation process or development work or deployment is going to be successful. Now, in a lot of other companies we work with, they also have what they call the innovation team or the design team or the facility team. If those are needed in the discussions itself, they need to be in the team as well.
Yeah, Jeremy, from an operational point of view, would you agree with what Jasmine just said?
No, I do, Jasmine, great answer there. And I think from the more tactical perspective and the end-to-end process, the table is constantly changing. So while we wish that every solution was a one-size-fits-all, it never works that way. So looking at the beginning of implementation, you need your key stakeholders, including the client. We know that oftentimes we try to fit a square peg in a round hole. Mm-hmm. Automation doesn't fit every solution that we have. So we want the client to be involved in that from the very beginning and making sure that automation fits their solution. It comes from proper data, proper solutions, and engineering as well. So the client, number 1, second within the operations, and then I think the solutions and engineering team need to be a part of that from the very beginning as well. As you travel through the solution and through multiple different stages and phases of implementation, there's handshake agreements that happen as other people come off and more people come on. You're going to want your safety partners looking at this to ensure that this solution that you're fitting into the operation or a certain building, does it fit? Does it synergize? You want your HR involved in this. The solution we're rolling out, can we hire? Can we fill to that? And then you also want to be very closely integrated with your systems team and your solutions engineer. So as you go throughout the process of implementation, that table grows and then it shrinks, and it's just a constant turning of different individuals. I do believe there are some that are there for the full run, but you just have to be mindful of those stakeholders that need to come in and then leave as time progresses.
Yeah, with that information, Matt, how do you get started, all right? You know who needs to be at the table now, but how do you start the process? How do you start thinking about what the implementation would need to look like and who all needs to be involved, and basically give us a couple of introductory steps as to how to start the process.
Okay, sure. So that is often the question, right? Can you guys hear me? Okay. That is often the question, is where do you start? And someone said a long time ago, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, and that first step is often the hardest, right? So where do you look? And I think distribution center, you're going to look for payback on the automation. And I think everyone we talk to these days, this is probably what you people feel, is that they say, this big retailer opened a DC down the street, they're taking all the labor, we can't find people. And so you're looking for solutions that will enable you to grow while not having to find the people that aren't available a lot of times. And so then we start with the process. We're very process focused, and I think you want to look at just about every distribution center has unload, stage, put away, replenish, pick, pack, and ship, maybe with value-added services. So where do you start? You often look at the P&L statement for your operation. You're going to look at labor is going to be a pretty high line item on most distribution centers. And so, okay, you want to start, how can our automation or robotics address this labor cost? And then you're looking at a distribution center, and through those functional departments, typically, not always, but typically, pick and pack is where you're going to have a lot of labor. So, okay, you'll look in pick and pack, and then oftentimes picking is that piece pick especially is where you're going to have the labor. So then you look at that from an industrial engineering standpoint, and where's all that time? And again, just typically, it's in travel. 60% plus is going to be in travel. So all these solutions, a lot of them are looking at, when you boil it down, starting with how can we reduce travel in a warehouse. And so that is often how you get started, and then you look at how many you have, what the total cost could be, build out your business case framework, start filling in what you know, and then doing research and designs to take it from there. So I think that's where we suggest starting. And if it's a manufacturing plant, it's very similar. That the labor may be in different areas, but again, back to the DC, you might look at people that have problems building pallets, but you have 10 there and you have 200 in picking. So again, where's your concentration and where you're going to get the biggest value for what your investment is?
Yeah, no, go ahead, Jasmine.
No, so I want to actually echo what Jeremy was saying. We have sites that is in European countries. For those people who have done business over there, they emphasize a lot on health and safety aspects around that, and the experience that we have to, it can be a long pole in the tent to just be able to get that approval through the labor union or even regulations and so on. So it's really important to identify anything on the peripheral as well. Like he says, you might have some people coming in and then leaving after a certain approval has been done. So that's actually important. HR is another one that we thought was really important as well, because people in the automation tends to think that the robots are going to take away their job at the beginning, right? So we need to work with the HR department to really formulate a plan on how do you communicate to the employees to ease their fear of losing their job, and why the customer is doing the automation. Primarily to message that, to think that way, so that they can plan communication ahead before the go live and so on. So just want to supplement some of what Jeremy shared.
Yeah, and a lot of times you want to free up your employees to help out in some other area within your processes that require more manual operations. So like Matt said, cut down on travel, cut down on picking times. If we can help that, and then you can use those employees to supplement something else, that's a way to handle the process and to implement this automation. Jeremy, do you have any opinions on this as well?
Plenty.
I would think so.
I'll piggyback on what Matt said. I think it starts with two words, and that's data and synergies. And if you ask any solutions team in the room or outside of here, you got to have good data. So where we start is the data that we're presented and how what synergize. I call myself oftentimes an operations hog. I want all the operations in my building, but I know they don't all fit. So can we make sure from the beginning that the data leads to my location? Does it synergize with what I have going on there, and does it integrate well? So I think those are two pieces on where you start, and how do you synergize across those different accounts. I think that's so important. And then I think the only other thing I would say, because we've highlighted a lot of good things here, and I know we've covered a lot of things, is just to make sure that as you go through that process past the starting point, that you have all of those assumptions validated. The worst thing that can happen is as you get to stage 3, stage 4 of implementation, is you missed on the starting point. Make sure those assumptions and data are very correct.
Yeah, and again, that is extremely important. You know what the data is up front, you know the areas that you want to target, and then you also have to make your assumptions along the lines where the data doesn't support. So,
Greg, if I may, could I just?
Yeah.
I think it's probably pointing out the obvious, but kind of wrap up those first two questions on who should be at the table and where do you start.
Yeah.
and I really think they're really close together, because where do you start is who should be at the table. We're talking about successful robotic deployments. That could be successful automation deployments. And there was this song I always knew from the 90s that said, people with no vision do exactly as they're told. If you don't get everyone involved, you don't build the vision of what it looks like, and everyone kind of going in the same direction, the ones that we're here talking about successful deployments, but the ones that I've seen be unsuccessful are where the design and operations weren't there. The HR wasn't, as you pointed out, wasn't there. So again, I think it's obvious, but the who to get involved and where do you start, they're really the same answer. That's where you do start, so you can create that collective vision.
Yeah. So we've gone through the journey of, you know, how do you start, you know, who's at the table and things like that. Now let's say that we have implemented the solution, all right, whatever solution that it is. There's a robotics, there's an automation solution involved, you know. So now I want to ask is, who owns those robots? Who does the service? Who keeps the robots moving as intended? And I was hoping that Jasmine here could help us with this, because that's what she does. She supplies these robots.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of customer journey mapping. So when I grow the team, I want to make sure that the customer experience is there. We want to support our customers, because it's only when they're successful, we are successful. Now, to be successful, we need to know the KPIs. What do we start with? We need to align with, during the kickoff, during the regular meeting, we need to know what is it that they're trying to achieve. We are all about ROI, because we want to implement something that can get in returns itself. So to support all those things as part of the journey itself, you know, the way we organize our team is think about deployment. So we have deployment team, project managers, as well as deployment team that is actually working alongside with operations, with solutions design, with their IT department, with the WMS integrators, and so on. But after we go live, how do we keep the bots going? Now, we have customer success managers. They have regular cadence to work with the customers. Because I can tell you, once you're live, that's the start of the journey. You never get to an optimal point just at the get-go, because it's a change, right? You need to manage the change. It's new. We're dealing with humans. People, in most cases, don't like change. I've been doing this for 20 years. Why do I need change? So change management is really important. So we want to guide them. We want to train them. We want to be there to support them. We do a lot of data. We collect a lot of data. We have, you know, dashboards, reports, and everything, because data tells a story. So we want to use the data to share with them. How are they performing against the key metrics? How are they doing? Now, if there is areas that needs to be improved, we will be able to tell the story. We use data to say, hey, you know what, there's this particular area that's not performing as you should be. What do we need to do about it? So we want to continue to optimize, continuously improve what they're doing. Now, to continue having them to use the bots, we don't only just look at how the bots are doing. The bots is just a means to what they are doing as an operation from inbound, outbound itself. We want to make sure that we look at everything holistically, be advisors to them, be consultants to them, to make sure that their workflow and everything works really well. So we have a team that specializes in doing those types of work itself. Now, because there's robots, they need to be maintained. So we have preventive maintenance on a regular basis to make sure that the bots are healthy. We have proactive monitoring to make sure that the bots are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So collectively, we have all these different functions to make sure the bots are running, the batteries are in good condition, the wheels are in good condition, and we have optimization using data, we have regular check-in, we have QBRs, we have health checks. We do a lot, but that's what we are all about, to help our customer be successful.
Yeah, and it's taking that holistic point of view. Matt, do you have any follow-up to that, or you want to?
I guess I have follow-up, but nothing to add. What I would really do is just emphasize what Jasmine said. What St. Ange does with the analytics and the design, it's almost the easy part. The hard part is the change management and getting people to use it, and making sure that everything Jasmine says is phenomenal. Just don't let your automation vendors walk away before it's done. Right? Make sure that they stay there and they do train the people. and they go through that change management. Because really, I think that, as you pointed out, the change management is oftentimes where the deployment does succeed or not.
From an operational point of view, Jeremy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is don't be afraid as an operator to hold your robotics group accountable. I think that's so important that when there are things that need to be done, maybe continuous improvement, maybe a roadmap, pull them in. The beginning is not always the end, and you've got to make sure that you hold them accountable because it's a partnership through and through, and they hold us accountable as well. So it's that partnership and handshake throughout the relationship.
Yeah, and there's also a planning aspect involved with it, you know, and you know, sometimes over the deployment of some of these systems, things change over the 12, 15, 18 months it takes between the time you start discussing the project to the time that it is implemented. And that constant communication with the team and with the operations group to just tweak the things that are needed along the way is a big benefit. So Jeremy, I wanted to ask you as well, we've gone through the process. What have you learned along the way? What are you seeing that you would you know, advise our potential clients out here, you know, what to look for and how, you know, going forward with this?
Yeah, assuming that we've defined KPIs and SLAs coming to this point, making sure that, one, there's a few measures of success here, but that you're hitting those. So as we've implemented, as we come through into startup or rollout, how are we tracking against those? What does that look like? And ensuring that we're meeting the KPIs, not only that we've signed up for, but also the customer needs as well. I think just a few other things that I would highlight to look for as you come into the implementation phase is that continuous improvement. What you thought you were getting at the beginning, are you getting that, and what have you learned along the way in order to already improve? I don't think a continuous improvement roadmap has to be 1 year, 2 year past go live. It could be first 90 days. It could be 180 days in. Just ensure that you're having those open conversations. And then I think from there, just ensuring that there is this constant maintenance and sometimes hand-holding in the first several months to ensure that we're meeting those demands as well.
Yeah, no, you know, client support, being on site after go live is critical. Jasmine, you want to touch on that as well?
Yeah, by the way, I just missed a function. We have 24/7, 365 support as well, right? So, you know, operations, we have customers that are just 24/7. I think they only take 1 day off, more probably, maybe. And so we have a global support team as well to make sure that the customers have a way to contact us when they need help here. So now one of the things that I want to kind of tag along, so Jeremy, 3PL, has Locus Robotics in his operations here. One of the things that we were just briefly talking about is their flexibility and the ability to scale. Businesses change, customer profiles change, demands change, peak season. So one of the things that is really strong on Locus Robotics here is to be able to flex, be able to scale, right? We were just talking about in a warehouse, you know, there's a lot of 3PLs that has multi-tenant customers themselves, right? So, you know, we might start with one particular customer, and adjacent you might have a different customer. We are able to just add on easily, configure the systems to be able to expand that. So Jeremy and I were just talking prior to coming on stage around how we're going to do that itself. So that's part of the change management. Peak season itself is that, you know, how many people have, like, you know, on the operation side itself, has sometimes 4x, 5x of demand coming through during peak season.
Yeah.
There we go. It's a real problem. What do? Most of the time, they add people. When you add people, you now have to add supervisors to manage. You now have to screen hundreds and hundreds of people. We have stories to tell you that, you know, once the robots were there, they only hire a fraction of what they typically do. The support functions to try to bring so many, you know, hundreds or sometimes 1,000 people, it's a lot of work. So we are able to really help our customers manage the peak season and manage that 4 or 5 times of the volume they need to do. And I think it's remarkable that way.
And one of the things Jasmine touched on is the scalability of this product. You know, I've been in the industry 30 years now, and you know, it used to be you design to a threshold, you design to 5-year, 10-year period, and basically almost have to implement that solution day one, thinking that it'll grow out to that 5-10-year goal that you designed it to. With these types of implementations, you can scale it up year by year as the growth demands. And Matt, I'm sure you've seen similar situations in your time as well, where you know this type of product is very scalable.
And that is the nice thing about the robotics, that it's modular, it's scalable. At some point, you can even shift it between facilities, where some of the more traditional equipment you can't transfer to other facilities as easily, which is really beneficial for someone in Jeremy's business. The only other thing I'd add to the deployment, what Jeremy said about both the operators and the suppliers being a team, I think that's the most important. And the only thing I'd add is just don't give up. It is hard. It's change management. Don't expect change overnight. There's going to be pressure from above, especially the people that have approved the financing, to get results in the design specs on day one. You know, there is a ramp-up period. So manage those expectations. That's part of the success, I think, and stick at it. The beauty of compounding applies to these as well. Small incremental changes each day. You won't notice them as much, but you know, after a month or two, you'll look back and say, wow, all those small changes added up to a big difference, and now, you know, this is doing what we thought it would do. So, yeah, have patience and don't give up. That's the only thing I'd add.
So we got about 15 minutes left here. Is there, are there any questions out in the audience that you want to ask this panel? We have a handful of experts up here. We got an operator, we got a consultant, we got a provider. So there's a bunch of questions. Yes, sir. Yeah, so the gentleman asked about potential new solutions and the effect of AI within those solutions.
Sure. So Locus Robotics is on what we call a RaaS model, Robot as a Service model. So it's basically an OpEx model. You don't buy the robots, you technically lease the robots there. Within the RaaS platform, we have what comes with it is a solution. You know, I like to say that Locus Robotics is a solutions provider. Yes, robots is a means as part of the solution, it's a tool. But you know what it is? The robot is physical. What really differentiates us is the software. And the software is what we call Locus One. So the Locus One platform comes with the robots, comes with the intelligence around that, and comes with us, my team, that's there to partner with the customers on implementation. So Locus One platform comes with multiple things itself. What Tim was asking here is about Locus Hub, which is part of Locus Intelligence. Data, as both of them have said, we use data. We are very data-driven customers. And with data comes AI, right? So you need that data. We, by the way, surpassed 4.5 billion pigs. We are going to be 5 billion pigs. Just imagine that number. How many zeros are there? Just imagine that. It's a lot of pigs. It's a lot of data. We believe in business intelligence. We work alongside with our customers. We get their input around what do we need for you to run the operations efficiently, right? So there's the business intelligence, there's Locus Hub, but we don't stop there. In terms of AI, we use machine learning to recognize MAGs. We are using simulation to be able to do what-if scenarios. We have what we call Locus Labs. By the way, all these things that I'm mentioning, if you want to hop over to the South Hall, the Locus booth is 2703. Go there, check out all these innovations that we have. And for those people who love to work with the robots, we even have a demo floor there where you can actually interact with the robot directly. Okay? Now the other tech stack is that around the business application. That is really our secret sauce as well. which is business applications of making sure that the UI is easy for the associates to interact. We speak about, I think 25 languages is my last count, because the UI translate based on the profile of the person who's interacting with the robots through a user tag itself. So those intelligence, those data, it's all built into our system, which is where AI comes in. There's a lot to do. Everybody's talking about AI. There is a lot out there. And we are an innovative company, okay? You know, Jeremy, you have also used another robot called Vector, Origin and Vector, but they address different use cases. And the robots, by the way, is really an AI machine. They autonomously is able to get from point A to point B without any code on the floor. That is AI. The robots travel on its own. That's amazing. Like I said, check it out, 2703 South Hall. You know, love to see you guys there. Let me see if I missed anything. You want to? You good? Okay. Tim, did I answer your question? I know in a long fashion, but yeah.
Yeah. We have another question. I don't think we can hear you. Can you come up here a little bit? I'm sorry.
You mentioned flexing and scalability. Scalability, I got. Can you talk about the flexing? Because I'm thinking, like, if we set an ROI, we set funding, and we have to flex, like, the cost that comes up with that. So can you describe that some more?
Yeah, so the question here is basically along the flexing of the robotic force to manage the busier types of your year, correct? Your peak seasons, things like that. So I'll ask Jeremy to kind of talk a little bit about this as an operator.
Yeah, I think with any solution, you have to be able to meet 5% or 100% of demand. And I think that's so important when you think about just scaling your operations and flexibility. I think the answer that I'll go back to that I mentioned earlier is how can you flex it in a certain account into another account? I think that's one piece of it. And then holding our Locust team, and yeah, I'm using Locust as an example, multiple other vendors accountable to what does that flex look like? Are we able to flex amongst customers? Are we able to flex amongst different operations? I think it's going to be very operation specific, and how you flex that. Scaling's a little bit easier. I think we've talked about continuous improvement roadmap. We've talked about how we build solutions that can peak and scale without even bringing in additional robots. But flexing across customers, flexing across operations, and then the last thing I'll say is challenging your partner, whoever that may be, to flexing across use cases. So what I may be picking in direct to consumer, why can't I make that a B2B solution? Why can't I make that a point-to-point? Why can't I utilize that for some other type of operation? It's going to require some creativity from the operator, from the solutions team, but have that conversation with your partner, just like we do with Locust, in understanding how can I flex this from what it was built for to what it can be. And I think that requires the creativity. So there's many other use cases that can come from it.
I'll just add for flexibility that the robotics industry is getting more and more mature each year. There's more install bases. There's some implementations, that went better than others. But what the result is there a number of vendors that have rental fleets available. Now it's like temporary labor. Everyone wants the rentals at the same time of the year, but they are flexible. If you have a traditional unit sorter, you can't go rent a unit sorter for the holidays, right? You put in what you need for that holiday volume. With the if your provider has the rentals, that's just another option you can look into.
Yeah, other things in terms of flexibility as well. So Locust was born out of Amazon acquiring Kiva Systems. When Choir Logistics lost Kiva Systems there, we want to make sure that we design a system that is flexible to be able to help 3PLs to add. I was impressed that Jeremy used the term cust owner. That is pretty much a Locust term, which it means for 3PL is a customer within a single site itself. So we grew up that way. We can actually add customers in there, whether maybe they swap out or they just expand. So the one flexibility, it's about we start here in one space, and then we just keep adding the space. I will tell you a story real quick. back in 2016, 2017, DHL in South Haven, Mississippi was one of my very first customers. You might know about it. And we started out with only about 14,000 square foot of a space with only like 10 robots. Now the entire building has all the locust bots. They now use about 100 robots to actually operate that. So over the years, in about 2-3 years, they actually just expand and scale. So there's that scalability itself, which is a lot of flexibility around that. The other flexibility, obviously, is the peak season, adding the bots for like a couple of months, and then you can return that to us itself. So that's another flexibility. The other flexibility really is about different segments. We started out in 3PLs, retail. Now we have a lot of sites in the healthcare industry. We have that in the industrial industry, car parts, aerospace parts. So we are actually expanding in terms of the different use case like also Jeremy talks about. And to expand to those use cases, we need to create different robot form factors to do that. So when you get a chance to see it, the Origin bots can pick up to 80 pounds, whereas the Vector, 600 pounds. So we develop different form factors because we want to be able to solve more problems within the four walls of our customers and really gain the trusted advisor status with our customer in collaboration and in partnership.
And because of the popularity of the robot as a service, you're able to flex your fleet as well. Basically just increasing and decreasing the number of bots in your fleet for your season. So that there's a lot of flexibility there. I'm going to get this gentleman first, and then I'll come to you, okay?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the question was, are there any comments on articulated robots that do the actual picking as opposed to, we've been talking about basically AMRs, talking about locusts that move around. When we look at the robotics, we think about the controlled mobility, the controlled identification, and then the controlled grasping. The mobility identification, I guess I'll say the easier ones. The grasping is the tougher one. There's one company out in Pittsburgh that was trying to do all three. I think they were called, I remember the name, but they were walking around with a picture of a locust robot with an arm pick on it that was going, identifying and picking it out of the area. The articulated robot's been around since the 60s, 70s in the automobile industry. That's a solved solution. It was adding it to the mobility that was tough. And so we have seen implementations with people doing the traditional unit sorter, dumping into the bin and then trying to do the identification, selection, and putting to a put wall. The articulated put to a put wall. In that case, the identification part of it was difficult in the bunch. And so where it seems to be now, at least in my limited experience, this is one person speaking, but it seems to be we're leaning towards, I think, robots doing the selection of a tote, conveying it to an area where there's an articulated robot. That tote now has identifiable sections, and so you're not identifying within a bundle. You kind of have one SKU in the tote, so that makes it a little easier. So that is kind of where the application of the articulated robot is at now. To my knowledge, again, just me, but I'm not aware of anyone who successfully married the articulation with the mobility, with the identification yet. I think it's coming, but that's what I've seen, and I've seen successful installations. Some of their competitors, maybe you, I'm not sure, where they have those pick modules. The thing is, it's the rates don't necessarily get to the ROIs that you would like until you work over, as she mentioned, 24/7. You really need a 3-shift operation to approach the justifications at the current price points. But it's all that being said, it's definitely evolving and getting closer. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's the next phase. The next phase is to take the AMRs and bringing something to an articulated robot to do the picking, and that's going to be real quick. I got this gentleman over here.
Oh, it was I Am Robotics is who I was trying to think of. So I call him the god of robotics.
So the question is how long does it take typically to implement a system? All right, Jeremy, do you want to?
I can take that. I would like to hear Locust first, starting with
All right.
Locust from the implementation
Okay.
side of things. Yeah.
Sure. It depends.
Yeah.
Now, remember I talked about we just don't show up and just implement. We integrate with the WMS systems, right? So we have projects that we actually deliver under 2 months because the WMS integration was listed as a top priority and they put in the resources to support that, okay? Now the other thing too from a scalability itself, we have a minimum aspects around what we need to do from an integration perspective. So the 8-week implementation, we look at it and say, okay, to get the bots running, this is what we need to do. Then we do incremental changes to do that. Now, if let's say the WMS resources are not available, sometimes we schedule that out, it can go up to about 3 months or so. When we get on site, when my team get on site, we are able to get the bots up and running within 2 to 3 weeks. Again, it depends because we work with huge enterprise companies and they say, no. You guys can get it done in 3 weeks, but I need time to make sure that I do proper UAT, and they have standards within the organization to say the requirement for any projects, it's a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks of testing. So we work alongside. We pair up with them, we partner with them, we collaborate with them to do that. Jeremy?
Yeah, I think it's, just to close out on that, great answer. It's never a one size fits all. If you already have something within your operation that it can synergize with, much faster, but it's taking the data and the assumptions to get to that final point. Anywhere I've seen from 3 months to 2 years. It just depends on the size and scale of the operation as well.
Yeah, hopefully not 2 years itself, but I do have encounter with some implementation that took longer, and it's because we kicked it off, the building is still being built. Mm-hmm. Literally, I'm like, okay, there's no rope, we can't even implement it until the building is built. And then after they're built, they have to buy the structure, and that takes some time as well. Now do keep in mind, it also depends, because if the first one where we already integrated, then the next site is a cookie cutter, right? We have ability to just migrate the configurations and everything into the next site. So we have, in fact, we are actually in deployment where this particular site, they came to us about 2-3 weeks ago, and they said, I want this site with your robots here, about 90 to 100 robots. And when do they want to go live? End of April. We are going to do it. Trust me, we will do it.
So I just want to add, it's a great question, and my question back would be, how do you define implementation? Because that's what you're going to be getting asked. If it's your project, people above you are going to be asking, how long does it take? When will it be ready? And the response back should always be, well, define ready. What is implementation? Because it could be they're running around and they're working. That's one thing. It could be you go through all the UAT. 2 to 3 weeks is aggressive. 3 months or more is I think more typical. And then it's, you got your beneficial use. Now are you meeting all the KPIs Jeremy mentioned? So it's that change management and the political aspect. If you're going to be asked that all the time, ask back, how do we define it, and define success, and then we'll march towards it.
The other thing that I would also share is that sometimes, at times, working with Sanach or something, the customers is actually building not just on the picking and the put away aspects, it's part of the bigger systems, right? So we work alongside different technology partners, like pack size is one. I remember one particular site, we couldn't go live because we're dependent on pack size producing the cartons to be put on the bots itself, and that takes time for them as well to set up. I also had one where we were dependent on Dymatics getting their conveyors set up to be able to convey the pick totes or cartons accordingly. So it becomes a bigger project, and we are part of it, but we collaborate across the board just to make sure that we understand all the timing and where we interface with all these different partners. And that's important. To understand the critical success factor is important as well.
So that pretty much does it for us. We've used our allotment of time. I want to thank everybody up here. Thank you all for coming out and seeing us. And if you have any more questions for us afterwards, come find us, all right?
Their contact information is also up on here, so